Okay, thank you everybody. So let's start with a little bit of a temperature check. How are we all feeling out there? Now, in case you hadn't realised, I'm quite a believer in our ability to try to manage our moods and choose our moods, and the relationship between our moods and our underlying feeling and behaviour, the relationship between that and our performance and how well we do stuff. So I've got a little quick model I want to show you. And then we will do a kind of a temperature check to see how we all are feeling. Right, hopefully we can all see that all right. There we go. Right, so this is the mood lift or the mood elevator, depending if you're feeling American or not. And yes, I did used to work for a lift and escalator company, so I particularly do like this model. And it was an American-based organisation, so we talked about elevators. I wanted to kind of imagine our range of moods a little bit like an elevator. The higher up you go in an elevator, the higher in the air you are. And generally speaking, the higher up you go, you get greater vision. You can see things further away. You can see a broader spectrum. You know, the higher up you go, the better our vision gets. And then obviously the same is truthful if you go down, isn't it? Or rather, if you go down, the lower down you are, the less you can see, because you can start to only really see things at your own eye level or things that are closer by. So, but the lower down we go, where our vision is less, you can make up for that with a mindset. So if you can imagine, we're in this kind of mood elevator, and it's a good, neutral, comfortable place to be is the floor called curious. That's kind of neutral. That's neither brilliantly positive, but also not really, really negative. It's curious, that's good. We can see a fair bit, but because we're curious, our mindset's helping us understand more. We want to understand, so that helps us see more. So if you imagine you are in this mood elevator, where do we all feel we are at the moment in this mood elevator? Just as a quick kind of check-in. Where are we? We can use the chat function. We can get that up. Just to pop in and just give us an idea of where are you? How are you feeling right now? Where on that mood elevator are you? Whilst you're doing that, I've got to find my chat function again. There we go. Oh, thank you, Gary. Grateful is coming out first. Oh, Anitra is feeling creative. Let's see. Oh, we've got some curious. Good, good, good. Appreciative. Lots of different kind of behaviours coming out. Today, I'm feeling quite optimistic, and I'm also feeling quite appreciative of a lovely thing that a neighbour has done for me this morning to help me with my garden. I'll be honest, about 2 days ago, I was right down there feeling irritated, defensive and frustrated. Teenage daughter conversation didn't go very well, but when I realised that part of it was my mood that was driving that. So, you know, we can all be at different places. So let's have a look where people are. We've got some gratefuls, creative, appreciative. Oh, Leslie, feeling a bit irritated. A new coffee grinder that doesn't work.
Yeah, it's had me a bit annoyed, I'm not going to lie.
You know what? I don't blame you, because in this day and age, you've got to have a bloody coffee, haven't you? If you can't have
coffee, I'm very particular about my coffee, and yeah, wasn't very happy about it.
Okay, let's see if we can help you move from being irritated to being a bit more curious. I wonder why that coffee grinder's not working. I wonder what I could do to get it going. Then we've got some more appreciatives and curiouses. Yes, we've heard them less a bit of it. Oh, we've got a couple of anxious going on out there as well, though. Yeah, anxious. But you know what? Sorry, when I use the word lovely, it's maybe the Welsh farmer in me coming out. What's really lovely is that as a group, we feel very comfortable to be able to say that. And they've opened up. We've only kind of worked together on and off for a couple of hours now. So now genuinely am very grateful, thank you, for being so honest with that. We can't all sit in the top end of the mood elevator all the time. We do get down to the bottom end. and we all have different entry points and different baselines. So what we need to avoid doing is inadvertently judging people based on where they are in that mood elevator by looking through our eyes and our frame of reference. We travel up and down, and some days we can go up and some days we can go down. We need to use that full range of emotions, but don't forget you're in an elevator, so you can go up and you can go down. And to a great extent, we can choose what floor we land on, can't we? With an elevator, with a lift, we do press a button. Sometimes if we want to go to the 6th floor, because of the way these elevators are programmed, it takes us down to the 2nd floor first of all before we can go back up. So sometimes we have to go through that annoying journey of several floors. But don't forget, when you want to get off, you can get off whatever floor you want to. So even if we're feeling a little bit low down at the moment, don't worry, you're not stuck there forever. You can get back in that elevator when you are ready, and you can move to a different floor. How else can we use this though? There's a couple of ways that we can use this. One is a bit of a check-in. How do we all feel right now? We can then start to appreciate that some of us are feeling great, some of us are feeling not so great. So we can manage our behaviour and the impact that we leave on each other. We can ask ourselves some questions around how is our current goal helping? Sorry, how is our current mood helping or maybe preventing us from reaching a goal? When we can start to kind of pinpoint where we are, we can then start to ask ourselves, is this helping me? How can I use this mood elevator to improve maybe what I'm doing right now? When I know where I'm at, what floor I'm at, can I work my way up the floor? And then, how's my mood maybe affecting other people around me as a team? Or how's my mood affecting my ability to work with others? There's a number of different questions that we can ask ourselves. But just I quite like this model because it takes the emotion, because it's all about emotion, but it helps us have a conversation without feeling emotional. You know what, guys? I've come into there feeling really anxious, feeling really irritated today. Right, our colleagues, we can appreciate that. Or if I'm feeling really creative, really optimistic, the last thing everybody around me wants to see and feel and hear is my way. They're just feeling a little bit tough and hard going at the moment. So, a little bit of a check-in. Thank you, everybody. That's good to know where we're all at. And I'm going to do my utmost to maybe not leave you on that bottom floor at the end of this hour and a half today. Now, let me stop that share for a minute and get us all back together. I never like to assume, but I think we're all okay on Zoom. I'll just do a really quick, I can see we've all got the chat box. Don't forget you've got your reactions at the bottom. More than happy, love you to use your reactions as much as you can do. We found how we can mute ourselves, fantastic. Shirley, you're still in outer space with your video that you've personalised. Feel free to personalise if you want to. If you haven't yet found everybody, top right hand corner, you can move from speaker view where you've just got one person looking at you, and then move to gallery view as well. And we will do a bit more whiteboarding today, a little bit later on. I've had some feedback around how people particularly enjoy the whiteboarding, so I'll make sure that we use that each week. Is there any particular part of Zoom that people are a bit less certain about? Want to go back and revisit? Or maybe you can use your reactions and give me some feedback as to say if you are okay or if you're not okay. Oh, experts now. I'm sure this isn't the only time that you use Zoom. Right, okay, so before we dive into week 3, right back at the very start, you gave me some feedback around just help us link together each of the topics. So we'll do a really quick recap on last week, and just something that we can see that could be a bit visual to help us understand what we did last week, or just remind us, move forward. Remember, last week was all about psychological safety. minimising the risk of creating an environment that either you or your person you're speaking to might find threatening or uncomfortable. We learned that the brain's basic function is to keep us alive, and the brain always starts from this base of threat. It assumes there are threats out there, it looks for threats, it finds things that actually might not be threatening. It doesn't help us find anything that is particularly rewarding. And then our brain, when it finds a threat, it treats these, what we talked about, these social threats in the SCARF model. It treats these social threats in the same way as kind of physical threats. And our brain responds in exactly the same way. So we also probably learned that when we feel threatened, our ability, well, our perception is pretty shot. Our ability to collaborate, think rationally, our creativity is all reduced. I think in one of the videos you would have seen this week, Jim Tam describes it very nicely as we become stupid. So that's unfortunately how our brain keeps us alive, but actually can sometimes really work against us. And that's when we see these emotions coming out. And when we get emotional, we don't always handle things in the best way. Remember we talked about the fight, flight, freeze response, which is our own natural response to try to keep us alive. And then last week, we also looked at our personal reactions, and we looked at other people's reactions as well. So we started off thinking about what's going on in our brain and how is that maybe working against us in these difficult conversations, but what steps we can take to try to mitigate that risk of our brain doing an unhelpful job and helping us see threat everywhere and respond in the way that we feel threatened. Now, I did ask if anybody would be brave this week as well and maybe share some experiences of how you might have used the SCARF model, or just used or done something this week that, because of what you learned last week, either enables you to do something differently or view the situation in a different way. Anybody feeling brave to share an experience and some of the, maybe an aha moment that they had last week outside of the webinar? If you feel brave, if you could unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'll go. He said bravely. Yeah, actually, it was this morning actually, because I was kind of looking at the notes from last week, kind of thinking, well, I don't think I've I don't think I've had the opportunity to apply it. And then from about 10 o'clock to 11, well, yeah, for about an hour this morning, I was firefighting, trying to resolve a problem. I knew it was going to get all a bit contractual towards the end of it. As an engineer, you kind of have to present problems and present solutions to problems, and invariably there's a financial fallout from that at the end. So I've just had an email just before the meeting started to say, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, we're obviously disappointed we've got to this stage, but yeah, we'll progress. And you know, there's no rhetoric flying around at the minute. Now, I'm not saying that's all down to me in any way, shape, or form, but actually, I did look at the SCARF notes and remind myself of what they all stood for. And in that sort of situation, I kind of looked at, well, actually, I guess it sounds quite trite to say, but it's common sense, if you know what I mean. But it's sometimes it's good to see it laid out in front of you. You think, okay, well, I'm doing those two things. I should just concentrate maybe on this aspect of it. And yeah, we'll find out at the end of the day how successful that was. But yeah, so it was encouraging that, you know, kind of in that way you're using what we're talking about here.
Lovely, thank you, Garrett. And I can completely relate to what you're saying when you get into the contractual piece. Well, you said this and I said that. This is now going to cost so much extra. We forget about the humanness, don't we? And we just revert right back to the letter of the contract or the agreement that we had originally. We don't think. But it was so interesting what you said then at the start. You know, it is common sense. You're dead right. It is common sense stuff. Someone far cleverer than me once said to me when I heard, it's just common sense. Common sense, Rhiannon, but is it common practice? And I'm like, yeah, no. It is common sense, but no, it's not something that we do all the time, is it? So thank you, Gary. Thank you for being brave. Anybody else feeling brave? Will take yourselves off mute and just say, look, I had this experience this week.
I had 2 conversations this week. One with a team member who I had to give some pretty rubbish news about holiday and cancelling and things like that, which is a never nice thing to do, and it was something I was really dreading. But I remembered what you said about sort of the attitude that you go into having the conversation with, and normally I would get quite anxious, fret about it, and work myself up almost before having the conversation. So I waited until I felt in quite a good frame of mind and calm and things like that before having it, and it went really well. And that particular member of staff was really understanding, which was great. And then I had I've got a client who is monopolising a member of the team's time at the moment as well, and I had to have a chat with them about sort of fair usage and that type of thing, which I was really dreading, obviously a paying client and things like that. But again, using the SCARF model, and it went a lot easier than I expected, and things are going better, and hopefully will continue to do so.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, they're brilliant examples. Thank you, Jess, and thank you for being so brave and to share your experience of that. You're absolutely right. If we go in, remember that maybe that mood elevator, if we go in feeling anxious, feeling irritated, that's almost a foregone conclusion that is how the conversation is going to go. If we go in calm, collected, open, curious, wanting to listen, wanting to hear, it is amazing how other people respond to you in a different way. And very often, if I talk to clients about a program like this, having difficult conversations, having better conversations, giving feedback, and when I first talk to them about, right, well, we'll start, pretty much most of the program will be about how the individual manages himself. No. We need to know what we say, what if the other person does this. And actually so much is in our gift and within our control, because it's about how we go into a conversation and how we manage ourselves, rather than trying to anticipate the 1,000,001 other things that the person could do or could say at the other end, which is just if we go into it differently, it makes all the difference.
I'd just like to say that I think that, not that I'm perfect by any means, but I think you can see these sort of things in other people more easily. And, it's such a rushing about sort of world in companies nowadays that sometimes people scoot from one meeting to another, and they don't actually prepare their head for the next meeting. They've still got the previous one, and it might be quite a serious meeting, a difficult conversation like we're talking about, and they don't give any thought to preparing the demeanour, do they? And I've sometimes said, come on, let's just have a few minutes. They say, no, we're going to be late. And I say, yeah, but it's better to sort of like have this little chat rather than go in sort of feeling anxious because we're late. And they're the sort of things to learn from and to reflect on yourself on, they.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Shirley. You're absolutely right. We just don't stop. I don't know if anybody else is finding now that we're not going from meeting to meeting, when it was almost okay if you were in back-to-back meetings, you could rock up to that meeting a couple of minutes late and say, sorry, I was, on in the other building on the other side, so I'm in back-to-back today. I'm just, and you got a little bit of time moving from one meeting to another, but not enough to clear your head. But now when you go from Zoom to Zoom, the only else finding that the tolerance level for people being late is always a lot lower, because you haven't had to walk anywhere. you're just sitting in front of your computer all day, you know, that we're expecting an even quicker turnaround maybe these days. Is that just me? Is anyone else feeling that as well?
No, I get that, and I get so worried as well about my Wi-Fi because it's so bad that when it goes down and I'm in the middle of like a presentation or stuff like that, so I feel that like I get so anxious before I have to speak to like senior people, and if my Wi-Fi goes down in like a awkward conversation, it just makes it even more difficult as well. So yeah, it adds on extra worries almost.
Yeah, so you haven't even started that conversation and you're feeling anxious.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's tough, but it's not impossible. It just means things like this we need to kind of become even more conscious of and aware of, I think. So thank you guys. That's starting to show that we're turning the nice little conversations we have on Zoom and actually packaging it in such a way that you can then use it outside. Because that for me is learning. That's the difference between learning to apply something and just going on a training course and maybe having, you know, a nice lunch. In those days when we met face to face and we had a training course with a nice lunch. That's the real difference. It's great that you're here, but it's even better for me to hear that you're putting into practice what we're talking about. Right, so this week, something new. So this week we then started to look at, now we understand what's going on in our brains and that we can be emotional, and there's some steps that we can take to mitigate the risk of being emotional. It doesn't remove it, does it? Because we're human beings and we're basically a bunch of emotions with a head on. What do we do if and when we find ourselves starting to get and feel emotional in a difficult conversation or a difficult circumstance? That's what today is going to look like. It's going to look at. And just like we did last week, what I'd like to start off with is I'll put you into breakout rooms in a minute, and I just want to go back and have that discussion. Remember what I said about reflective observation? What did you take away from the learning material that I shared with you? And here I'm going to apologise for one of those videos. I've heard from lots of you that you weren't able to watch the Your Mind on Mindfulness. That's fine. I'm going to park that this week and we'll pick it up next week. I'll find a better way of getting that material out to you. So I'm sorry. That one didn't go well, but we'll leave it this week. So just thinking about everything else that you read or you listened to, just like we did last week at the start, I'm going to put you into breakout rooms for a couple of minutes and just discuss with each other the same kind of 3 things to prompt your thinking, not questions you've got to answer, but what struck you about the models? Maybe what did you learn about yourself, your actions, or any other people? So what did you learn? And was there anything that you particularly liked or disliked? Or if those are too strong a words with you, what particularly resonated with you the most or resonated the least with you? I have popped that right back in the chat box. The very first, as you scroll to the top of the chat box, you'll see the questions I've put in there. It's not my expectation that you have answers to all of those questions. Just use them as a guide for your discussion. I just need a second now to figure out the breakout rooms. We've got what?
With the, if I think I joined in a little bit late, so I don't have the those questions at the top of the chat box.
Right.
I don't either.
Okay. Let me put them back down at the bottom.
It seems it only shows
it's
the
back.
chat from when you're in.
So you can only see chat from when you join. Now that's something else I've learned today then. Right, so how many rooms did I work out I could put you in? I'll write it all down. I can't keep it all in my head. 3. Right. Breakout rooms. So I'm just about to put you into your rooms, randomly assigned. Just have that discussion, just so you can bring back in your memory what it was you saw and thought about. Oh, there we go. 3 rooms, and just as normal, 10 minutes, and then I'll bring you back in. See you in a few minutes.
That was funny.
Yeah, we had the timer ticking down, and then it got down to 0. Then it was like, oh, 60 seconds. It was.
You know, I've noticed that when I've been a participant kind of using Zoom as well. We're told you've got 10 minutes and you've got 60 seconds. It's like, oh, we can chat for longer. So I think, right, shall I set it for 9 and tell you 10? Oh, Rhiannon, you're over bloody thinking.
That's the if then, isn't it?
Yeah, you're there. Sometimes I say I'm just thinking too much. Oh, everybody else is shooting back in as well now. Hello, welcome back. Right, thank you. I do actually. There's something quite efficient. This is really appealing to my efficiency part of me. When I say the breakout ends, you're all back. No one's gone to the toilet or nipped off to take a call or made a cup of tea. Or been caught in the corridor as they come back. Oh, no, let them go. Hey, we'll be lovely just to hear a quick kind of summary from each group. Just kind of share. What did you talk about? And for us that are listening, just have a listen to think, oh yeah, we did, or no, we didn't. Is there anything new we could pick up from that? Which group would like to go first?
We'll go first. Why not? I'll do it. Just like in the style of, as I was saying in the group, I haven't really got any notes, so I'll just wing it. Yeah, so we all discussed the various bits that we went through, you know, that was in the email about the different videos and stuff like that. I personally really liked the cultivating collaboration one. A few of us, we all did really. It was quite a good one. And yeah, we all sort of looked at different parts of what you put in there, and we liked different parts of it, and some bits we didn't like. So you know, I personally really liked having in the cultivating collaboration, seeing all those triggers up there. Sort of there's a slide that he shows where it's like, what you know, what's your reaction to being frustrated or being sort of triggered into that mindset of like fight and flight sort of thing. And you know, I looked at it, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'd do that or do that. So that was really interesting to look at. But there was also in that, like the if then technique, that sort of thing, that worked quite well for Katie and Tracy. But they found that they do lots and lots of planning with it, so it's like there's a lot of planning going on, so that also becomes a bit of a problem because there's too much planning happening rather than just sort of going into it. But for me personally, like I said, I wing it quite a lot. So for me, it's actually quite useful because I don't do much planning. So it works better for different people, I think. And yeah, and the other part is just the labeling the emotions. We all thought that was like a really great way of just sort of putting yourself back into your mind and thinking about the situation and what it's making you feel. And especially how it's like, don't use just like really basic emotions. So don't just say, oh, you're happy or you're sad or something like that, but actually deep diving into, you know, what are you actually really feeling? And I think, you know, for me personally, that was also really interesting and something that I looked at last week and actually thought about, and you know, opened up some interesting channels for me. But yeah, we just discussed all that really, just had a good old chat about things. It was good.
Perfect. You did exactly what I asked. That's brilliant. Thank you, Lester. To other groups, who kind of wants to go next?
I can, if you like.
Thanks, Deborah.
I was with Shirley and Katie Deacon. So I suppose what we mostly talked about was a bit like what Shirley said before we went into the breakouts, that just what's really important is taking that time before a difficult meeting or conversation to firstly recognise how you're feeling, recognise your emotions, and get yourself in the right headspace, and that would be a good time to use the if and then as well for a bit of planning. So I said, I know for me personally, I'm really short on time. I only work I work like 4 days a week, not even a full day either. So I
am constantly going into meetings without planning because I don't have the time. So I think what I've realised is I need to make time to be able to do that. And particularly for people who you know well, the if and then can work quite nicely if you know how they might respond because you know them well. So people in your team maybe, whereas it might be a bit harder if they're people you don't know perhaps to kind of predict what's going to happen. But yeah, so that's mainly what we talked about, really, just like how important it is to really give yourself that time and make sure it happens, and how hard as well that can be, like practically as well. But yeah, I don't know if I missed anything.
No, you've got some supportive nods. Not that no, you didn't, but no, you didn't miss anything. So to speak. Yeah, that makes any sense. Thank you. And then the last group. Who's going to be brave and go from the last group?
Ours was very similar to the first group. So we talked a lot about the cultivating collaboration. We could all relate to the red and the green behaviours and the environments that creates. For me personally, it put me back into an organisation I worked in where it was all very red and how it's quite toxic, that culture, which was quite interesting. We also talked about the labelling that the first group talked about. And shared experiences about when we've used that ourselves and how that's stopped us and brought us back quicker to be more rational in our thinking. So we talked a lot about that. We talked about the if and the then, great technique. And we also talked about the different skills and how the one around which gave us a list around what are my signs, about the early warning system, acknowledge, etc. We talked about how that kind of encapsulated all of the different elements into one. So the acknowledging is like the labelling, for example, and how that kind of brought everything together, so it's a really great checklist to have to actually incorporate all those different elements. So have I missed anything? No. Okay.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. And it's I was going to say it's amazing. That didn't have to sound patronising. It's amazing just how much you really have picked up and be able to say, oh yes, I could see that, and I can see how that links together there, and how that could help me there and help me there. There is so much, and this might sound like I'm doing away with kind of my institute, but there's so much you really can learn, self-directed learning yourself. You don't need to go on courses and someone to tell you. What I think is really valuable is I've read something, I've learned, or I've heard something. Now I just want to kind of deconstruct that with someone. Let's just bounce that around and have I missed something? Have I got this right? Because that takes this concept knocking about in your head and actually then puts it together into something that you can actually do. So lovely. I really like those discussions. And I'm really pleased that no one said, yeah, that video was just pants. That was horrible. I couldn't get on with that. Because everything that you've read and listened to, we're going to do a bit more of that. So that would be a really bad starting point. So, right, I think everybody's picked up on labelling emotions as something. Sometimes some of you are doing that already. Some people saw that and thought, oh, that's a good idea, that's a good place. It's a really great place to start. And I think this is what came out in all of those materials in a slightly different message. Start to label, because then what you're actually doing is taking this from just being emotion that you're feeling that then triggers your automatic flight, freeze response. By labeling it, what you're actually trying to do is turn off that automatic response and get that, let's say the front part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex here, get that working by firstly making a rational decision. What I'm feeling is X, rather than just feeling it and letting it then automatically move to your emotion and then your automatic unmanaged behavior. So it's catching at that point, which is so critical. And I think Jim Tam's video, the collaboration with the red and the green chickens, I think really pulls this one out in a very easy to listen to way. So I'm a big fan of Jim Tam. That was the first time I came across him, was on that video. And it's amazing just how much work he has done. So if you're interested, Google away and have a look at some more of his work. But what we're going to do now is kind of put that into practice. We are going to try to label an emotion. And because hopefully we're not all angry and upset and feeling threatened right now, it does mean we've got to go back into our memory a little bit. So in a minute, I am going to ask you to go back through your memories and try to remember a situation where you felt threatened, you felt under pressure. If we use the scarf language, where you felt socially threatened, a socially threatening situation. Could have been an argument, difficult conversation, a feedback conversation. When you felt that emotion rising, let's kind of go back in your memory there. Actually, I think let's all stand up. If you're not connected with your headphones, if you can and it's safe to do so, let's stand up and do this, because otherwise we're sitting down all the time. Come on. Stand up and think, right. Think back to that occasion. Maybe try to visualize it in your mind, or think of some descriptive words. So get it in your mind, or get it into your memory. Then think of it more detail. Where were you, maybe? Inside, outside. What were you, maybe what you were wearing? What were you doing? Remember any sounds or smells, maybe? Just get that memory into your mind. And then when it's there, there's two things for you to think about. What was the emotion you were feeling? And try to be granular. What was the emotion? And then what was going on for you physically in your body? By that I mean, something happening with your limbs, your hands, your legs, something happening inside. Was it hot? Was it sweaty? Get that emotion and that feeling. Now I'm going to put a whiteboard up, and can you just quickly just get out of your mind what was your emotion and what was the physical response. You can sit back down now if you want to do that as well. Let me get that whiteboard up. What was your emotion and what, if anything, was your physical response? I'll pop mine up as well. Lovely. You've got leaning forward, to appear supportive. Your heart was beating faster. Trying to show reassurance. Shocked and felt sick. Disappointment and failure with no eye contact. Oh, it's all coming up now. Move that so we can see. Yeah. Humiliated, anxious. Uncomfortable. There. Sweaty hands and face goes pale. Tense. Any more to come up still? Closed body language, it's like you switched off. some of these seem a little bit like Jim Tam's list, and with the emotions and the triggers. What we're trying to do here is to help you recognize what might be happening to you, or what might happen to you when you do feel emotion. If we can start to recognize that emotion and or that physical feeling as well, we can start to use that as an early warning signal. So I know definitely for me, it's my tummy flipping, and I can literally feel my tummy go, that's my early warning system. And what I now know is when that happens, the real danger, I'm going to lose it, and I'm going to become this emotional. So I now know when that happens, I have to, I started off by walking away, but then I soon realised that that's not actually a very sensible thing to do sometimes. It's really off, cut somebody off. If I can't physically walk away, I still have to disengage somehow. I have to get myself out. And sometimes I've been able to say, I just need to pop to the ladies for a minute. Can I just, any kind of excuse so I can disengage. But if you can start to describe that feeling, so when you do feel it again, and it could be just a feeling, or it could be a physical, or both, that's your point then. You start saying, right, okay, I need to do something different. The first time this happened to me, when I was able to, I suppose, label and then stop that automatic next step was, I can still remember the day now. I was in a meeting, and I had gone to present, this is how we can do the engagement survey this year. And for me, I thought, we process the engagement survey in the same way every year. So went in, this is what we're going to do, and how we're going to do it, and when we can do it. Straight away, the train came thundering down the track at me, and I was in a room with the senior managers who did not want that. I had finger pointing, I had fist stamping. I still remember one of the phrases, "You're a support function, Rhiannon. When are you going to start supporting us?" Lots of anger and lots of aggression. And I sat there, and the first thing that popped into my head, and I can laugh about it now, it's not very ladylike, sorry. I remember thinking, oh, you got sweaty armpits, Rhiannon. That's all I thought, oh, you got sweaty armpits. Then I thought, yeah, I am hot. I felt hot, my armpits were sweaty, my cheeks felt red, and I thought, well, I'm probably going a bit red. And that was the first time ever that I thought, I know what's happening now. This is just a chemical reaction. And I was able then to not do my automatic, which for me at that point in my life, my career, I would have shouted back, and I would have banged on the table back, and we all would have ended up in some, no, I know what's happening. And I said nothing. So I didn't know what to say, actually. I don't know. And for me, it felt like I was there for, hours, probably seconds. But I said nothing. Everybody else can carry on with their shouting, and then it kind of went quiet. And I still remember the next phrase was then, so what are you going to do about it, Rhiannon? Still feel I'm red and I'm really hot. And so, I don't know. What would you like me to do? And that was my most proudest moment in my entire life, because I didn't shout, I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't respond. I left a lot of time and a lot of space, and I felt so in control. I felt all that emotion was just giving me more energy to be in control. I just simply asked, I don't know, what would you like me to do? That was a turning point for me. Now, that's happened once, and I can recognise and it's the physical, I think, more than the emotions for me. I get stronger physical symptoms. I can now say, right, I'm going to do something different. Anybody else got a story to share similar to that, when you were able to go, oh, I recognise what's happening to me here, and stop that chain?
Yeah, I probably have. That we at work had to make somebody redundant, and I actually had a friendship with this guy as well, and he was quite elderly as well, and I found it so hard to shut off the emotions that I was feeling, because I felt so uncomfortable. I didn't want to do it. I felt really uncomfortable, and I came up with a barrier of like defensiveness of, I don't want to do it, I'm not doing it, it's wrong, all this, put my 2 cents in, nothing was done. And then I had to, luckily, well, not luckily, but I wasn't the main lead in the meeting, but I was still present to do like note taking. But even that, I felt uncomfortable, and I could just feel myself going pale, like my hands were sweaty. I couldn't even make eye contact because of when he was then obviously getting emotional. I was like, oh my God, you're like a granddad to me. I can't even look at you, like that sort of emotion. And then I just had to take myself out of it. And actually, I needed to, like what we were saying about mirroring people's reactions. So then if I'm more like positive in my, well, not, you can't really be positive in those meetings, can you? But if I needed to not feel so closed down and actually instead be more open, and I'm quite a smiley character normally, so, and that's how he would know me as well. So then I had to be like, oh no, it's okay, like, oh, it'll be all right. And inside I'm like, oh my God, I hate my life, why am I doing this? And like, and everyone, it then got quite heated as well, like what you were saying, like that. Then he then turned as well, and then everyone was shouting, and it was just horrible.
Oh, horrible. I mean, yeah, that sounds like a really awful situation to be in. And everybody's emotions are high, aren't they?
Yeah, and everyone's were. And the line manager, he didn't want to do it either. It was from the top down. So everybody, it was unfortunate because everybody in that room didn't want it to happen. But it was like pushed out, delegated. They like to delegate the hard ones.
Yeah. We don't want to get involved.
It's called working for big companies, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's brilliant, though, Kate, that you're able to go back and then now you can describe how you were feeling physically or emotionally. If you can, that's a label. So whether it's, we've labeled that emotion exactly to the T, you can now recognize when you feel in a threatened or an uncomfortable situation, this is what your body might do. And this is where it leads very much to this if-then plan.
Yeah.
If you feel those physical symptoms inside you again, then what I'll do is this. And this could be applied to a number of different situations, but the idea of the if-then plan is, if I feel the emotion or the physical symptoms, which I now recognize is the start point of my fight, flight, and freeze response, how do I basically shut off the part of my brain that will just take me down the fight, flight, freeze route? And how can I force the front part, this CEO executive functioning part of my brain, the grown-up bit, to take control and for me to choose a rational action instead?
Yeah, definitely.
By having this if-then plan, what you're doing is you're telling your brain, if I experience this, then I will do that. And at its basic, all you're trying to do is create a new habit, because our brains are just patterns and habits. So the pattern that our brain follows when we're feeling under threat and feeling threatened, fight, flight, or freeze, that's been kind of there from the start. We can rewrite or create a new habit which will form a new pattern in our brain, but we have to practice hard at it. And the first point is by recognizing, if I feel or do or experience X, then I will this behavior. I don't even know if this next slide kind of helps articulate that any differently. It's that we can change our behavior with the if-then plan. If I feel X, then I'll perform Y behavior. And that's what we're going to do next, our final little breakout today. We've heard about the if-then. We've talked about the if then. Now I'm going to put you into pairs, and actually between you, figure out, now you've got a bit of a better idea of what your X, your warning sign is. If this happens, what can I do? And in your pairs, just work with each other, help each other out, make some suggestions. Obviously, the individual's going to know what the trigger is, but if it's then, I don't know, what the hell can I do? Chat it through as a pair. 2 heads are better than one. Let's come out with a really rough if-then plan. So, let me get my little breakout rooms up again. This time we're going to pop you into pairs because I think it's a bit more of an individual discussion. Oh, maybe I've got to stop sharing so I can see breakout rooms. There we go. So let's say, so I'll pop it all into pairs, but again, just about 10 minutes this time. Think through and create a first stab of an if-then plan for each other. Help each other out. You can have just about 10 minutes to do this. I'm not then going to ask you to come back and share that because that's completely unique to yourself. If you want to share any, oh my God moments, that's fantastic. But these are personal to you, so you don't have to share them. But this is just one extra thing to have in your armour. So I'm going to send you all off. See you again in about 5 minutes. I had loads of beats coming into my head then. Excellent. Right, let's get rid of that. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not going to ask you to share unless anybody particularly wants to. But what I thought might be a good opportunity is let's just take 2 or 3 minutes, just ourselves, make a note. Let's just jot down what struck you about today, or a key bit of learning. Maybe a key aha moment from today. That one had some lovely bird song in the background there, and it was gorgeous. Okay, I'm thinking that, judging by the way everyone's starting now to look up, I think we're about there. Right. Is there anything anyone wants to share from that last breakout? Anything you want to let everybody else know about?
Yeah, I can share one that I was thinking of. I've got 2 of my colleagues here, so just know it's not relating to them. One of the things I have thought about this just while you were speaking earlier about it, and one of the things that I do catch myself is that I'm normally negative about certain types of meetings that I get. Normally these meetings are like ad hoc meetings that sort of get not forced upon me, but sort of like, oh, can you go talk to this this person about this? And I normally don't have. This is the first time I've ever talked to that person about a subject which I might never have approached before or something like that. And I'm normally very negative about that. It normally gets me like, if it's a couple of days away, like for those next 2 days, that next meeting, I'm just like, oh, I just don't want to have anything to do about it. And it just drives me nuts. I just get really negative. But then normally what happens is I get to it, I force myself into it, and then it's absolutely fine. And I come out feeling really positive and refreshed about it. But yeah, so my sort of, I was talking it through with Katie, like the response for that was, you know, I'd need to really think about, they normally always go well. You know, the reason I'm doing it and other people aren't is because I'm normally got the expertise to deal with it when other people haven't or might not, and that I add value to myself and the business by doing these meetings. So I'm really hoping that sort of helps, because for a long time I've never really thought about it too much, but it is generally something that does affect me weekly almost. And, you know, I'm going to give it a go and see what happens anyway.
Oh, Lester, that's brilliant. Thank you. And I wonder for that week, or it's happening weekly. So your mood elevator is probably a bit down there.
Yeah.
At best, it's acting you off. At worst, it's acting everybody else around you off as well.
Yeah.
I won't ask your other two colleagues to pass any kind of comment on this, but I wonder if what you might be like to work with for those couple of days before that meeting.
Yeah, I wouldn't ask them.
No, wouldn't dare. Wouldn't dream of it. Great, thank you, Lester. Now, is there anybody else? I'm not saying you have to share, but is there anybody else had a bit of a oh my god moment similar to Lester in that last breakout?
I think there was one thing that kind of struck me, particularly in the build up to the breakout room, was I've always kind of had a lot of time for Rudyard Kipling's poem "If," which, leaving aside the use of pronouns and all this thing, you know, it is about that trying to keep your head whilst everyone else is around them is losing theirs. It should put you in a stronger position or more positive position. It's very easier said than done.
I always had that pinned on the back of my desk, Gary. That poem really helped.
I feel the need to share that, everyone, and I'm going to embarrass myself and say I don't know that poem very well. So maybe if one of you could pop it on an email, and I could share it across the rest of the group, then, if you wouldn't mind. Or maybe it's just me not knowing it and I'm just a bit sick.
I'm happy to do that, but like I say, I think it was written over 100 years ago, so therefore I think the use of it was written in a different world, shall we say, and I'm very conscious of the fact that it's just myself and Lester here, and maybe the other people go, "Ooh, really?" But yeah, it's the what's the phrase? It's the sense of it rather than the actual the direct analogy meaning.
Okay. Lovely, thank you very much. Right, so we're coming to the end now. We've done our 90 minutes, so let's have a very quick recap. What have we done so far? We think right back to the very start. Since we've come together, we've understood why we react in the way that we do sometimes. We better understand now what makes us feel threatened and what could inadvertently make other people, or what we're doing could make other people feel threatened, and what we can do to mitigate that risk. We've learned more about how we respond under pressure and the emotions that shoot out of us. And now we're starting to put in place a kind of checks and balances to control those emotions. And if we think about what we've done so far collectively, that is getting us a good way towards mastering these difficult conversations. And so far, we haven't thought much about the other person, we've just thought about ourselves. We haven't thought about exactly what we're going to say, how or where we're going to say it, because we can give you the best plan of what to say, what room to do this in, what day of the week, and it means nothing if both of you aren't feeling in a psychologically positive place. So I'm kind of moving away from the process and focusing it all back on the people and the person. So that's half the battle to mastering difficult conversations. A lovely boss, an old boss of mine once said to me, and it's that long ago, I'm paraphrasing now, but You can't change somebody else's behaviour, but it's easier to change your own behaviour, bring out a different response from them. And she's very, I always say old and wise, because she wasn't old, but very wise boss, and that kind of thing has really stuck with me. It's like, yeah, you know what? All my difficulties, sounds a bit negative, all about me, really, isn't it? So, what are we going to move on and do next week? So I don't leave you on that really depressing note when I said it's all about you. Very quick then slide, keeping that end in mind. Please do try to put into practice things that you've learned this week. And whether it doesn't have to be a big, oh my God moment, just what have I learned about myself, or even, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could put your if-then plan in place? Because believe me, that is going to take a bit of time to stick, because retraining our brain doesn't happen overnight. Now, I'm just going to reach quickly here, gone off track slightly. I've got a series of little red cards with my little writing on the side, by the side of me, and literally it's always by the side of me these days on my laptop, because everything's on my laptop. When I catch myself exhibiting some of these behaviours or getting some of these feelings, I've got a red card to stop me and a what I need to do differently. That might work for some of you guys, but literally this is I'm still, I suppose, you know, midway through retraining my brain to do my if-then plan automatically. Really got to work hard at it. So do your best to put that into practice this week. Feel confident to share some of your experiences with us next week. As usual, expect an email from me tomorrow morning with next week's learning. And next week is all about keeping things on an adult basis. And when I wrote this down, I thought, oh God, does that sound really dodgy, or does that sound really funny? I hope it doesn't come across as dodgy or corny. Yeah, next week is all about trying to keep your behaviour on an adult level, which then in turn can encourage the other person to respond on an adult level as well. And we'll pick up on the mindfulness piece that we weren't able to do this week with the video. I also want to say a really big thank you to everybody so far who has answered my feedback questionnaire. Your feedback is really, really important to me, and I really do appreciate it. So if you haven't yet had the opportunity to do the questionnaire, which I completely understand, if in the next week or so you could pop your thoughts down on that, I'd be really grateful. Thank you. And so next week, sorry, not next week, tomorrow, I'll pop the email out with the learning materials, the recording from today, and those few slides that I've used today as well. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time again today. I've got a feeling when we meet next week, the weather might not be as nice. I don't want to put a downer on it, but let's wait and see what the next 7 days brings. Otherwise, thanks for your time, everybody, and I will see you all again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.